Spreydon Cashmere Community Board.
Do you want to do this? I don't want it cycling because I want to go try.
No, that was the way it was set up for their one. This one should just arrow through and it should be good.
One here?
Yeah.
Pure, it's all very well for you to be in praise of those people who've got pictures, Leanne, but it's very stressful. Especially when someone starts to introduce moving things. So anyway, we've got a Part A and Huntsbury Community Centre lease renewal. I just want to briefly mention Huntsbury, which used to be called St Huntsbury on the Hill, and St Martin's on the Hill, is coming up to its centenary, and I asked heritage people on the council, and they came back with some really interesting remarks about the history of Huntsbury. But this is the community centre renewal, which is halfway up the hill, and it's used so much that we had a meeting, Tim and I, yesterday with other community board members and residents at Vista Place, which is at the top of Huntsbury Hill, about an issue of young people and their propensity to be in cars and play dub. And the local residents wanted to have a meeting at the Huntsbury Community Centre and couldn't find the time to get one because it's so packed out with events and with community interests. So we got the Part A. You moving?
No, the next part. It's the report that follows.
If you want to do your report.
Yeah, okay. Mel and I are going to share this. In the decisions made, there's a couple of things like events that aren't there, which I'm going to briefly mention, but you'll see that there's a request for staff to look into the possibility of a plaque in memory of Christine Loughton, and many of you will be aware of Christina and the work that she's done in the community and her self-effacing and absolute commitment to people and the community, and we're asking staff for comments about placing a plaque on a bus stop because that was one of her many, many interests. We also had our Garden Awards organised by the redoubtable Wendy Gunther. She managed to get out of our community dozens of random prizes for our gardeners at the end of our presentation of awards, and we had the biggest number of people at our awards ceremony that we've ever had, and it's just much loved occasion.
The area is smaller.
Even though the area is smaller, we had more people getting awards, and it's a much loved occasion, and we all attend, and it's fantastic. Also not mentioned is the fact that we're undergoing a series of school visits to the boards of trustees of our schools. The primary issue that's come up on the visits that we've done thus far are safer travel to school. We were really embarrassed at our first visit when the staff said, when the boards of trustees said how much they valued the work of the safer travel advisors, and we didn't know they existed. So we're asking them to come and present to us and tell them what they do. But this has been the primary issue that has been raised by our boards of trustees, is the safer routes to school and their fears and over the consequences of increased traffic and so on. And the last visit this week was Spreydon School, and they are losing their school pool and shifting to the old Manning Intermediate site in Hoonhay, and the loss of a school pool is always extremely sad, not just for the swimming but because of the community involvement that occurs in the summer when people get their school keys and sit with other parents in the community and look at their kids playing in the water. So that's a loss to our community, the fact that school pool is going to be closed. Mel?
What arrow do you do?
Have we moved nothing?
Why is it? No, we haven't. Oh, there we go. Excellent. So I was going to talk, we've got just mentioned the Hoon Hay Community Centre, and we've got quite a few photos of this. Lots of things have been happening there at the moment. There's a steering committee that's sort of been running for the last sort of 9 months under the umbrella of Rowley House. So Donna McAleer has been instrumental. There's been Doug Rankin and Colin Burt that have been part of that steering committee, and they've organised the lease that we've got at the moment with the council, insurance and all sorts of other things. A whole bunch of improvements have happened. The inside of the building was painted by students from ARA, which one of the local residents organised because he works there. The new sign was put at the front. There had been one donated that got damaged, so a new one was put in by Carl the Carver from Rowley House, so it's absolutely beautiful. There's been other things such as the curtains were fixed up and they put apple trees around the back and all sorts of other things. So there's a whole lot of community stuff going on there. And then the Hoon Hay Community Association's got a whole series of events planned for this year. So there's been veggie swaps and Christmas carol singing and recipe events and all sorts of things where every time you go you meet someone new from the area, which is kind of the point of having a community facility like this available for people to use. So that picture on the left is when that was the first community association meeting that they had last year, and this is just the higher rates form, and there's Carolyn there. That was the opening last year with the cake that got made by a lady in the community who wanted to remain anonymous, but I ended up door knocking her during the election and figured out who she was and where she lived, which was quite cool. And yeah.
And this is one of our other cottages, centre of the community. This is Manuka Cottage, and they have been in St Mary's, the beautiful church of St Mary's, for 4 or 5 years. Before that, they'd shifted a couple of times since their building went post-earthquake. They've now been waiting for 6 years. The staff are working very hard to replace Manuka Cottage and to establish themselves on Cornelius Park. If we roll it.
Yeah, okay, sorry, Carolyn.
There's the inside of the Church of St Mary's. It's absolutely gorgeous, with a wonderful congregation.
And that was the fair that they had recently as well on the left.
Yeah. And those are other fairs and occasions. We run a lot of joint functions with them, and functions that all the community board members turn up to, in consultations, cycleway consultations and so on, are often held in the church, and will be held in the future at Manuka Cottage in its new location, not far from the church, at Cornelius O'Connor Reserve.
Just to embarrass Carolyn, because she won't say, but that's her dressed up as Tweedledum or Tweedledee in the middle there, and she does that every year at our fair.
I'm always Tweedledum, actually.
Tweedledum. There's Cornelius O'Connor.
We briefly want to mention the Port Hills fires. The staff, what I want to mention about that is the staff. The staff have been absolutely amazing yet again, because they've been called upon so often in the last year with the Kaikoura earthquakes and so on. And Paul Devlin in particular, in a plane while the fires went on for those days. Paul Devlin up in the plane directing the traffic and the helicopters. And last time we saw him, he had unshaven, grizzled face and red eyes because he has worked so hard. But also the staff of the Beckenham Service Centre, who yet again have been working in an emergency situation, and all the other staff, many of whom I don't know, the park rangers, the people behind the scenes, the people organising the staff. Grace is now leading the social welfare side of it, and we just want to thank the staff. We think they've been doing wonderful, wonderful things. We've had a couple of resolutions on replanting, etc., but I think the staff have been ahead of us on those resolutions, and we certainly don't want to tell Grandma to suck eggs. We want to say how much they've done and how much we respect the work that they've done, and think that I think they've moved especially quickly on the issue of replanting, etc. Melanie's board's delegate to the Summit Road Society, and I'm the board's delegate to the Port Hills Trust. So we've got some idea of what's happening behind the scenes on private and what is it? Trust-owned land. Yeah. Skipping over the page, because we'll assume that you will have read this, the school's speed zones, that's what I've discussed briefly about that, the concern that the schools have. And Mel, you're going to talk about
so here's another picture that's similar to what that Sally showed before, just about Waltham Fair, because it moved out of Spreydon Heathcote into the new Limwood Central, whatever they're called now, and so it was a bit sad for us to hand that over, but I guess it's exciting for them at the same time. So I did a speech on behalf of Carolyn just to do a bit of a handover, because Waltham's always been a place in the heart of Spreydon Heathcote Board, and so, and we've lost our memorial gates to have our Anzac celebration at, so we've been scrabbling around for another area. And the last thing, which we haven't got a photo of, but we will next time, is just that we had a couple of the young people who'd won Youth Achievement Awards come back, and we haven't had a huge number of them come and talk to us. So Emma Pavey's been doing a really good job of asking them to come back and tell us about the places they've been to and the amazing international gymnasts they've met and all sorts of other things. So we were just really, really pleased to see what our funding had been able to achieve for them.
And this year we're going on Anzac Day to Sydenham Cemetery, where there are two graves next door to each other of soldiers that died, one of whom died 6 or 7 days before the armistice, and one died 6 or 7 days after the armistice. And when you look at the grave of the young man who died 6 or 7 days before the armistice, you look below and you see a plaque in recognition of his brother, who also died in World War I. So when you look at these two graves, you're not only thinking of the soldiers that died, but you're thinking of the families at home that received the news that two members of the family had died in the same war and probably in the same battles. So we know we're also having a wreath this year up on the Cashmere Hills at the regimental ceremony on Victoria Park. And that's it.
Thanks, Carolyn Melanie. That is also a very good report and informative for all councillors, I'm sure. Just and I just want to comment briefly about the great work that's been done around the new the Hoon Hay Community Centre, and having been a children's library, it's getting excellent results in terms of community development. I just want to ask you about your comments about the loss of the school pool, and you recall, Carolyn, that the teaching staff's concern was that all children learn to swim, and just perhaps some suggestions that you might have for us, either you as a board, as to how we direct that, and public transport might be one, but other ways perhaps that we support kids getting to Pioneer Centre.
You're quite right. The Board of Trustees raised with great concern, not so much about the cost of entering the pool, though that for a school like theirs is a major concern, going to Pioneer, for lessons, but they raised specifically the issue of transporting kids to swimming pools, and it costs $2.60 a kid, as well as on top of entry into the pool. And I think this is worthy of some discussion amongst ourselves about how we work that. As it happened, while we were talking, we realised that we could probably get those kids to school from their new location to Pioneer, believe it or not, on public transport, on buses. Just for once, the buses may appear to be going the right way. But that doesn't stop the problem for everybody else who hasn't got a school pool anymore, who are trying to get their children into school, into swimming lessons because of safety. Because it's a New Zealand right to grow up knowing how to swim. And I think this is an issue that it would be really worthwhile if the council could be discussing this with the other agencies that may be involved, including the Ministry of Ed. And thank you for raising that, Phil.
I looked at the map, and Spreydon is really close to Manning, and the pool's there, and it's a great pool. So have you talked to the ministry about actually just leaving the pool there and actually being able to turn it into a bit of a community
Well,
project?
we haven't, but we have always been told that school goes straight to Ngaitahu, and we can see a real issue there. That school was in almost a dangerous location. People coming off Curlitz Road, and the motorway, in other words, are coming down down Lincoln Road and Horswell Road, which is increasingly busy, and and the parents were increasingly finding themselves too hard to park to drop their kids off, and even too hard to get their kids to school. We gave a community award 3 or 4 years ago to the bloke who got the kids across that road there, because it's so dangerous they couldn't possibly have done without him getting the kids across the road. And so I'm not sure that the location would be an appropriate one to retain a pool. It's a point, and I think we should raise it, and you're dead right, Yanni, but I can see it going straight to Naitahu, and maybe housing and maybe motorway development.
Maybe talk to Naitahu or...
Yeah, that's right.
I think Carolyn's raised the single most important point, which is if we feel it's too dangerous to have a school there,
Yeah.
why would you have a pool there when the kids at times will try and get there on their own? There's, the Curlitz Road, Lincoln Road, and under Horswell, etc. It is absolutely just, it's getting worse and worse, or busier and busier. So to have a pool on its own, I just don't see it.
Okay. 4 community boards that I'm aware of have now made comment about the slowness of getting speed restriction signs outside schools. It seems to me a really basic, sensible thing that they would all have. Have you made submission? Obviously, we're not doing enough of them each year. Have you made submissions in your board's submissions on the annual plan regarding this?
We had a discussion about the annual plan yesterday, and we haven't written it yet, but we are in the process of writing it, and it will be in there. I also wrote to the other community board chairs at the time of the initial discussions about the annual plan in-house here. I wrote to all the other community board chairs and asked if we wanted to put this on the top of all our priority lists, because I do think it's an extraordinary issue. There is some concern that some schools actually don't want them, but in the main, our schools not only want those things, but they also very much want, the comments that were made to us were about the safer travel
Totally get that, yeah.
team, and the ones we didn't know about, and that they had remarkably good discussions with them. Notwithstanding that, as you say, Vicky, it was still top of their poll, every one of them.
So just for your information, there are only 3 planned each year in the annual plan. Obviously, that's got to at least double.
Yeah.
So just in terms of, if you want to know what.
Yes, glad to be on your bandwagon on that, Vicky.
So you would like to move it, seconded by Phil. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.
Thank you, Leanne.
Wait. We've got your